Alrighty, everyone. Well, I am going to get us started. On behalf of the entire ESIP staff, hello, and welcome to the 2025 July Earth Science Information Partners Meeting Highlights webinar. My name is Alicia Krall, and I am the Community Director for ESIP. This webinar will highlight the many events at the meeting from many different perspectives. Many of the speakers here today will mention ways to get involved in future activities, and we hope that this event motivates you to get involved wherever most excites you. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. If you have questions or comments at any time, please do drop them in the chat, and our presenters will monitor it and respond and share their own questions and comments there as well. So the theme for this year's meetings was Innovation to Impact. We aim to have immediate impact in the ESIP community by unlocking solutions for our fellow data professionals. And we strive for impact in broader communities by forging innovations that help scientists explore new and more complex questions, and by connecting with communities and individuals who need data. The ESIP meeting held in Seattle, Washington, and online was an opportunity to continue and accelerate these efforts. ESIP hosts two large conference-style meetings each year, an entirely virtual meeting in January and an in-person and virtual meeting in July. They are opportunities for individuals and organizations to connect and collaborate, working across sectors and across the data lifecycle. This is all part of ESIP's vision, which is a world where data-driven solutions are a reality for all, and earth science data are actionable by all who need them anytime, anywhere. So we had 249 total attendees this year, including 86 first-time attendees. The meeting featured 3 plenary sessions, 46 community-led breakout sessions, and workshops. These sessions featured well over 100 people who served as either organizers or speakers. And today we will have presentations from over 15 of the breakout sessions and all 3 plenary sessions, as well as a panel featuring some of our community fellows. So ESIP meetings are known for their level of engagement compared to other science-focused events. Ensuring engaging sessions is done with intention. This year, as in previous years, we provided a range of support for session hosts. So a session design workshop, office hours with staff, and one-on-one meetings with a session design consultant. We leave half a day open as an unconference space where attendees can propose a new session topic on that same day. And Thursday evenings, everyone gets together to create posters. So as you can see in this image, kind of thinking magic markers and crayons, to pitch their idea for Funding Friday the next morning. So once the pitches are over on that Friday, attendees vote on their favorites. Singing and dance numbers tend to draw the most votes, and the top picks receive $3,000 to $5,000 to fund their project. So we leveraged a number of different tools to promote collaboration and engage virtual participants. These included the use of Sched for our online agenda and session descriptions. Sched linked out to Kiko Chat, which helped access or provided access to the interactive virtual portions of the sessions. Slido and Miro boards are used for collaboration, for Q&A, for polling, and then we use Google Suite for overall organization of our files and note-taking. Our ESIP Figshare repository is our archive of meeting content where contributed presentations can be accessed and will persist with an identifier. So to access the presentations contributed to the ESIP Figshare repo, you can use the URL shown on the bottom left of the screen, and Zoe's going to paste that into chat as well, to access the meeting content that has been contributed so far. There you will also find many of the posters that were contributed to our research showcase. You can also find and access meeting content on our Sched site, so Zoe's going to add that link as well. At the top of the Sched site, you'll find a link to the YouTube playlist with all recordings and the link to the Google Drive folder with all session notes. Of course, we will keep linking content as it becomes available to us, and it's not too late to deposit your presentations in Figshare. We highly encourage you to do so. So Zoe's also going to share that link in the chat if you need those instructions. So in addition to the materials available in SCED, all breakout and plenary session recordings can now be found on our YouTube channel and in the 2025 July meeting playlist, which is also going to be in the chat. So with all of that, we are now going to transition to our highlight features. We're going to get started with the 3 plenary sessions. First up, we're going to hear from Mark Parsons, ESIP's Interim Executive Director, who's going to highlight the opening and Thursday plenaries. So with that, I want to turn it over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Alicia. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I am the interim director for ESIP, replacing temporarily Susan Shingledecker, who opened up the conference and welcomed us, laid out the plans for the week and so forth, and also reintroduced us to our vision, mission, and values, which Alicia talked a little bit about. But there was one piece, I think, of her vision, of our vision, that I think that stood out as sort of a theme for this session. And that's this idea that earth science data are actionable by all who need them, anytime, anywhere. And that really set the tone for the rest of the opening session. The first talk was from Brianna Pagan. It was brilliant. If you watch only one talk from the meeting, this should be the one. It really sort of set the theme for the whole meeting. Brianna is the technical lead at Development Seed, but before that, she had a long career at NASA. And she told a very personal story of how her home was destroyed in the Palisades fire near Santa Monica, California, and how it not only destroyed her home, but how it disrupted her life, upset her connection to the land. She's an ultra runner, runs all over the Santa Monica mountains, and really upended her faith in the useful availability of data, even though she had built her career around building data pipelines, leading satellite data missions, really, pushing to make data available. And as she noted, the irony was that with all my experience, I could not access the information I knew existed to help our community. And perhaps I think the most profound statement she made is what I highlighted here is technology failed me, my community did not. And I think that was sort of a key lesson and metaphor from the fires for our community of ESIP. And so she highlighted how, local knowledge is key, but it must work for the common good. And that action needs to be made to make data available in real time. And, she ended on a positive note with this focus on the community and some highlights of some systems that are being developed that can make these data more available and really focus on making data available and accessible first. And the focus on resilience, which was another theme. She was followed by Xander Wang, who's a professor at the Canadian Centre for Climate Change and Adaptation up in Prince Edward Island. He's the Falkenberg Award winner for this year. And he followed really nicely on Brianna's introduction because he had examples of real tools in work providing real data on the ground. At a broad level, he talked about a climate change portal that's used all around the world, but then he really dug into some particular local issues for Prince Edward Island. And there the risk is flooding and coastal erosion. And a particular system called CRIS, Climate Hazard and Risk Information System, that people can use to assess their individual risk, and even what they're doing in the lab to model coastal erosion and inland flooding and so forth. So really fascinating talk. And as sort of in the same theme as Brianna, he notes that there is a disconnection between global climate change and tangible climate action. So he was trying to make that tangible climate action real. Next slide, and I'm running out of time. Oh dear. Kate Thompson won the Raskin Scholarship, which is a scholarship that ESIP grants every year to a leading scholar in honor of our past friend and colleague, Rob Raskin. She talked about hyperspectral remote detection of contaminant-induced vegetative stress. So we can detect vegetative stress from chemical contamination with hyperspectral remote sensing. And she showed a variety of techniques to do that. She really got into the technical weeds. Jed Sundwall, who's the executive director of Radiant Earth, was really focusing on making data easier to access and use. As he said, it's never been cheaper or easier to create global data sharing infrastructure. It's time to figure out how to create it sustainably and ethically, another theme that ran through the conference. And his emphasis was really on cooperative work and how we might think about building cooperatives that enable data sharing to work at a global scale. And it highlighted that we're already doing this with things like ICANN and the legal identifier system and things like that. So I think this area of a cooperative is a ripe area for ESIP. But of course, we'll need new types of training and experience. And so we talked about how some of those skills would be necessary for the future. So that was a really broad, quick overview of a couple of great plenary sessions. I encourage you to check out the recordings. Thanks.
Thanks, Alicia. Hi, everyone. I'm Douglas Rao. I'm the president of ESIP board, and I will be providing an overview of ESIP business meeting. Every year, ESIP hosts its annual business meetings to provide an update about ESIP as an organization to the community or the state of the community. And the annual business meeting, this is open to the members, no matter whether you registered for the July meeting or not. And we know this year is very difficult from previous years. But we have the shared sense after the July meeting in Seattle, a strong community is the foundation of ESIP, and we will navigate through the drastically changing landscape as a community together. One feeling that we got at the Seattle meeting is that ESIP community is very strong despite uncertainty occurred this year. The collaboration areas calls participation is actually up in the first half of the year, which means that people are eager to engage across the community with others. The through-line themes have been collaboration across community and technology innovations. And these are driving the community forward across public, private, and the academic communities. However, we also want to acknowledge this year has been full of transition within the community. I want to personally thank the excellent team of ESIP staff who supported community throughout the year and in the period of transition. And you have seen more and more communication from Alicia, Zoe, and Aaron, who joined ESIP recently. And they have been excellent in making the meeting a seamless experience, in addition to Susan and Patty's stewardship of the event. And also I want to thank Mark for helping the community navigate through the transition for ESIP as well. Can you go to the next slide? So in the last 2 years, during the business meeting, ESIP has been trying to actively get the community inputs about ESIP's direction. So this year, with the help of Charlie Haley, we actually have conducted a critical uncertainty activity, which in my opinion is a way to apply the yes and improv mindsets to think about how to help us navigate through the uncertainty into the future. So in the activity, all the participants were asked to envision different scenarios of the future along 2 dimensions. One is on the changing federal funding landscape. The other one is on the community participation. So there was really like robust discussions, both in the room as well as online, of what the future could look like and how the ESIP community can navigate through those different futures if they were to happen in the next few years. So there were some common themes that emerged in the discussion from my personal take. And the first is to ensure the knowledge and expertise in the ESIP community is maintained and sustained. So those are actually, there are already conversations happening in different clusters and groups within ESIP on how the ESIP community can support this knowledge transfer throughout. And the second theme I identified is the around people. So ESIP could diversify the resources to support the professionals in Earth science data who call this community home. And if you are not aware, Alicia has been spearheading the community needs assessments, and which can help us identify and inform what ESIP can do to support the communities. Lastly, it's about building stronger partnerships with the peer and stakeholder organizations, really to help us strengthen the activities both of the groups are doing. So these are all very valuable inputs that ESIP board will use to inform our strategic planning in the next few months. And I really want to thank you for the robust participation from the entire community, as well as the excellent ESIP staff for supporting the entire ESIP July meeting. I will hand over back to you, Alicia.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark and Douglas. Next up, we're going to go into the breakout session highlights. These are going to be a series of 2-minute lightning talks. We're going to try to keep strict time since we have so many presenters here today. And Zoe's going to pin her screen when your time is up when you are presenting. We've asked each presenter to provide information on how to learn more and how to get involved. But if you do have any questions, please share them in the Zoom chat, and presenters, please be on the lookout in the chat as well. But first up, we'll start with Alicia to tell us about their group session, creating a DMP resource for the ESIP community.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Alicia, for putting this together, and to Mark for sort of carrying us through this transition as well. We gave a session on creating a DMP resource for ESIP. This was a follow-on session from our winter virtual session where we did some crowdsourcing around what best practices for data management plans are. So this is now a live resource. So we did a beta release of the DMP primer, mostly to get feedback and plan some improvements to on what the resource offers. Quick takeaways from that in general, it seemed to be useful and a good start. People seemed to find value in kind of what we had started to put together in the framework in which it was. There was a request for more around what is the impact of a DMP, why a good DMP is important, and what we understood the future of data management plans across the various different ESIP organizations are looking like, so people understand sort of why they're putting in the time and effort into making a good quality one. And then add more examples of different agencies, of different data types, of different domains. So this is an ask to please send us more feedback, or if you have other examples that we can include, please scan the QR code at the bottom, and the slide deck is available. That's a nice Google form for people to kind of contribute some feedback on it, and also to give us some suggestions for other resources to add. In the DMP issues link there's code tasks for immediate work that the working group is going to put together, longer term stuff that might happen, and then feature requests. So those are all kind of there. The working group's going to work on the sort of the immediate one over the next couple of months. And then we'll work with ESIP to promote this and advertise it for broader community use and uptake. So I'm Alicia Wood Charlson. I was the previous data stewardship committee chair. I've handed that off now. But Bolivar is currently still the ESIP community fellow, and you can find us in the stewardship Slack, or just send us anything on the GitHub issues, and we'd love to get more feedback from everyone as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Alicia. Next up, we have Joseph Gum presenting on the repository crisis scorecards.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph Gum. I'm currently the chair of the Sustainable Data Management Cluster, and the Repository Crisis Scorecards is a project we started back in February, published the beginning of April. And so we've done what I feel like quite a few tours of demoing and presenting it to people. We hope to be at International Data Week and AGU in order to give sessions about this in person. Our further goals are to eventually write and publish a paper on the repository crisis scorecards, hopefully this year. We'd like to conduct some interviews with anyone that's willing, really, whether you work at a repository, you deposit data, or you just use data. And all this is going towards revising the repository crisis scorecards so that it'll be a better tool for all of us to use to assess the risk of our data facilities and be able to have a more resilient place to work. If you'd like to work on the repository crisis scorecards or just learn more about the Sustainable Data Management Cluster, you can contact myself or join our Slack group. Our meeting is typically the first Monday of the month, but this week it'll be, or in September, it'll be the second Monday of the month because the first Monday is a holiday. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joseph. I'm going to turn it over to Carl Benedict to present on data replication and repository succession, sustaining and preserving data for the long term.
Great, thank you. Yes, this was a session that was really set up around the recognition of the challenges that a number of data repositories have been facing in terms of sudden changes in their funding or support models in which their collections were potentially put at risk. And there were significant and very rapid activities to try to ensure the continued availability and usability of those data sets. And so we were trying to have a conversation that extended beyond the boundaries of individual repositories and really focusing on the preservation and succession planning for the collections themselves. There was a lot of engagement in this as we organized it as a panel discussion where we had some examples of some specific mechanisms that have been developed for being able to replicate data sets between repositories. And we also went through an exercise in identifying challenges and tasks. And as a part of that, we collected a Miro board with a lot of information on it that we ultimately want to bring back to some continued work in the Sustainable Data Management Cluster to try to make sense and move forward with strategy development. Next slide. And the second session that was originally planned as a hands-on tutorial ended up revolving more around a technical exchange and the small number of us that were there around a deeper dive into the Data One and AirDAP data replication capabilities that had been highlighted and described at a higher level in the previous session. So there were some technical discussions and it was highly productive for the small group. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carl. Chris Stoner is next, presenting measuring impact success metrics for open data.
Yeah, so myself and Matt Pekoski from AWS held a session. Matt wasn't able to join because he is on paternity leave, but we held a session on measuring impact success metrics for open data. And sort of the point of the session was really to have, we had 6 speakers, John Weirs from National Renewable Energy Laboratory talk about ODI, which is the ODI data lake, and how they use metrics to sort of show the value of that data set. Similar talks from Doug Newman from NASA ESDIS, Emma Pittock from ECMWF, Graham Cotty from UK Met Office. Michael Wellington did a recorded talk from Digital Earth Africa, and Adrian Simonson from the NOAA Open Data Dissemination Program also did a recorded talk. The speakers really focused on their open data journey and how they're using metrics to show the value of their programs and show the usage of the data set and how valuable these data are. I think in this environment, it's very useful to have this sort of information in your back pocket. And for most, it's still early days and there's a lot more to discover on how to quantify and show the value of these data. And we did note that there were some limitations to the open data program that actually make it hard to get more detailed metrics. But there's sort of a balance that you need to find there. More information from the consumer of the data means more friction, and more friction means less usage. But most of the speakers said something around taking an iterative approach, trying different things, starting small with basic CloudWatch metrics, for example, and then moving into additional data gathering. And for some, like NOAA, the not office hours were most impactful as data consumers can self-select into those meetings and share what they're doing with the data. You can reach out to me and Matt in the ESIP Slack channel, or just send me an email. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Chris. Marshall is going to be presenting next on principles for the development and curation of semantic resources in earth science.
Yeah. Thanks, Alicia, and all the organizers for this recap session for the ESIP July meeting. We had an oral session from the Semantic Tag Committee. Semantic Tag is one of the long-lasting groups or committees within ESIP. And also in the recent years, this community has seen the increasingly attention to some new AI technologies, especially on large language models and foundation models. But for this session, we also look back at some of those conventional technologies and also the resources and ESIP. So we have a number of invited talks, including one from the OBO Foundry community, as people working on ontologies, knowledge graphs for biology and bioinformatics. We also have a talk given by Julian Raff. He's the creator of MinDat. That's a very popular open data portal within the earth science community. And here you can see a list of those takeaways from our session. We can still see semantics in the general sense is still very important for the fair open data, findable, accessible, interpretable, and reusable. If you look at some details at each of those items, findability, accessibility, interpretability, reusability, semantics can take a role in each of them. And then we can also see semantics can be represented in many different forms, like glossary, metadata schema, or the database structure, and also a lot of those complicated logical representations. So any of those, in a broad sense, you can take them as a part of the semantic technology, even including the large language models raised up in the recent few years. And also we can see the utility of semantic resources contributes to their resilience. MinData is a really good example. If you look at the history of the database, like the back end is a MySQL, is a relational database. And on the front end, semantic technologies are used in many different ways. Like they used Open Graph Protocol to increase the visibility to search engines. They use metadata schema to allocate data sets together with a persistent identifier. So semantics can be used in many different ways, but one consideration is they need to show the utility to the end users. And also looking into the very near future, we can see large language models can bring new opportunities. Not only on the generative AI or like how powerful large language models can generate new content, but also we can find a way to set up a bridge between large language models and those conventional technologies like ontologies, knowledge graphs, and control vocabularies.
Marshall, sorry.
We ended my time as the chair for the committee, and now we transmitted to Kogen Shimizu as the new chair for this committee.
Great. Thank you so much, Marshall. Julia Kelleher is going to go next. You Are What You Eat, resources to address the need for metadata-rich, high-quality biological data to feed AI applications.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. And thank you again for the opportunity to host this session. So we had this session with kind of a cheeky title, but just talking about how that's supposed to be an arrow between garbage in, garbage out, of talking about this need for AI-ready data and this metadata rich, as we've already heard today, the need for standard ontologies, extensive metadata, and this high quality. We were talking about biological data specifically to feed AI applications. So we had really great interactive discussions with all of the folks in the room and online. So we talked about biological data, which has a ton of potential for AI applications. And then we specifically talked about microbial data sets. So we challenged everyone in the room to think about how microbes might interact with their sample and data types, and seeing those overlaps and understanding how we can work with AI across different scales, from the molecular up to the ecosystem and global scales, and how we can integrate across time, scale, data types, and how metadata standards can help bridge those gaps. So we talked about metadata standards for samples, and then also for reporting standards. So we talked about these streams guidelines, which are publicly available, and the publication should be coming out soon, but these are for reporting in scientific manuscripts about microbiome studies. And we talked about how that could be useful for different systems as well. We also, us as the organizers, work on the National Microbiome Data Collaborative, and you can see the link here, where we have different resources and tools to help researchers perform microbiome data analyses. We have this data portal that you can see in the bottom left. So we had people explore these different tools, and especially the NMDC Field Notes mobile app, which can help to capture metadata in the field. So we talked about the utility of mobile apps across different systems as well. So those were our tags. Yeah, basically great session, great discussions, and it was really great to work with people that work with different sample and data types.
Thanks, Julia. Steve, you're up next, presenting Supporting Earth Scientists in Science in a Time of Disruption.
All right, thanks, Alicia. I'm not sure why my video isn't coming up, but you don't need to see me. So there we go. Hello, everyone. This session was more of a brainstorming style session, acknowledging that we are in an unprecedented period of disruption right now. And so what do we do about it? We've focused the brainstorming on 4 topics. What can we do as an ESIP community to help provide mutual support for affected community members? Importantly, and Douglas mentioned knowledge, what can we do to try to rescue knowledge that's at risk right now, as many people are suddenly severed from what they were doing and had work in progress, a lot of knowledge in their heads? Can we use our smarts to help rescue the knowledge as well as data? How can we help people have continuing engagement opportunities while they're in a transition period? Frankly, a lot of people are looking for new jobs. How can we help them be engaged in the meantime and feeling like they're doing something that they feel good about? And finally, who are the allies and partners with whom we should be collaborating? There was a very strong sense that this merits launching a new ESIP cluster on community support. So that's going to be work in progress in coming weeks, but that seemed to be, pretty broadly agreed that that would be helpful. And we are going to try to run a few learning pilots on capturing knowledge, that knowledge rescue function. So I will throw in the chat our notes document. You can review that, and please reach out to me, preferably by email, or Douglas if you want more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Tim Bailey, you're up next. Visions for the Future of Wildfire Data Science.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having this session. So our session really had the benefit of following Brianna Pagan's keynote presentation, because that kind of centered the discussion quite a bit, in particular in showing how some of our wildfire data science products don't necessarily deliver actionable knowledge to the people who need it at the time. And we are often building data science projects that don't have like an operational playbook. So we had 3 different presenters. Nick Maggio from the Oregon All Hazards facility was deploying a wildfire camera over a explicit region. Claire Sturms is from the Wildfire Commons project, which is in a sense building a system of systems where they are a convening place for new products. And Marissa Christensen from the Climate Wildfire Institute is developing or is exploring a lot of the social context of how data science is being delivered. And they've been regularly holding convenings that have articulated how the data science products are actually interfacing with the larger political economy. You know, and at the end we had a panel where we discussed, you know, the loss of people at key nodes in particularly the federal data science enterprise, and how you know, the importance of civil society organizations like ESIP and the wildfire clusters kind of in particular being focused on one component, how we can collectively facilitate resilience by kind of reconnecting and maintaining integrity of data systems that many of which are not functioning at the level they were previously. And this actually played in, you know, some of the side conversations actually evolved into where our kind of next steps are going. And we right now have two forks within the wildfire cluster. One, there's discussion about convening the tactical fire remote sensing group and facilitating that. And then the other is we're doing a deep dive into the way media and data science products intersect with public policy. We're going to be showing over the next two teleconferences discussions about that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Kristen's up next. Bridging high-value Earth system data with real-world needs, lessons learned through community engagement and resource co-development.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, I'm Kristen Robb. I'm a senior research scientist with the Global Resilience Institute, and I co-hosted this session with Tony and Irene from Quasi. So community engagement is the process of involving stakeholders in decision-making, research, or a project which increases the use and accessibility of critical earth science information in real-world applications. One important aspect of our session was our discussion around end users. During the session, we posed the Slido question, who are the end users of your science, research, data, or product? The biggest word in the word cloud was researchers. However, in many conversations I had throughout the ESIP meeting, when I asked different folks what the ultimate goal of their work is, I more commonly heard the answer along the lines of to help people make better decisions about flooding, hazards, climate change, etc. So my main takeaway was that while many folks are producing earth science information for other highly trained scientists, this information often has intended application in the real world where not everyone is a highly trained scientist. Therefore, this session explored another perspective on end users of earth science information, which is community decision makers. Some of the high-level takeaways from our session were that community engagement is distinct from social science. So there's an art to choosing the correct methods for your endeavor. Community engagement is a spectrum and will not look the same in every project, and that anyone can include community engagement in their work. It's not just for social scientists. So finally, if you'd like to learn more about a project that leveraged community engagement to make hydrology information more accessible for non-technical end users, we encourage you to visit the link shown here at the right of the slide. Or if you'd like to learn more or have specific questions, I encourage you to reach out to me or my co-host via email, which is listed above the website. For the record, I'm a social scientist and specialize in community engagement, and both of my co-hosts are hydrologists, if that helps you narrow down to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Next, we have Maria presenting communication across the geo-bio divide.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Schatz from the National Institute of Environmental Health Science, and I'm presenting on behalf of the Geodata for Health cluster, a new cluster that I co-chair with Anne Dessen of UNC Chapel Hill. The title of this session was Communicating Across the Geo-Bio Divide, and the focus of the aim of this session was to gather requirements and use cases and pain points at the intersection of geoscience and public health. The session was discussion focused. We identified a few several potential study questions that would integrate geospatial and health data sets and discuss desirable characteristics of these data sets, including data formats and resolution. So the same I took the same question just last week and addressed them to the health community during the International Society for Environmental Epidemiology and Exposome Science meeting, and they wanted me to bring back some answers and suggestions for the geospatial community. So apparently people are really struggling with incorporating data quality metrics into geospatial data sets, because we biologists and medical scientists can judge well what's the quality of the health data sets, but it is really hard for us to tell whether the geospatial data sets are of appropriate quality to be used. So please take it as a note. In addition, the session identified a few potential objectives for the cluster, which is open source tools for spatial temporal joints, methods for assessing the content of protected health database for grant writing, and tools for aggregation of heterogeneous in situ data. So you can contact us by emailing this website, this email address listed on the slide, and I'm also happy to put in the chat a list to our notes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maria. We now have Rocio Vital presenting on turning Earth data into action, AI for wildfire risk prediction.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for doing this. So in our session, we were discussing a wildfire model that we have built in for operationalization of some of the research tools that have been used in academia. So we were talking about how do we take those research tools and models that have been validated, but now need to be used or can be used in the operational environment. So we talked about how do we gather the best input data for these models, where can we get the data, and then also how can we upload that data into the model or integrate it without a very large latency. There was a really good discussion about the different tools and methods. We also spoke about how we can use AI and cloud accelerations to make these models faster, so that instead of having to run supercomputers in academic labs, they can run on machines, maybe on the cloud or even on the edge, and they can provide results in minutes instead of taking hours, so they can be used in the field. And then the last part, how do we convert all the information that we're getting from these tools and these models into actionable insights that can actually be used to provide information and help the decision making, rather than overloading the user and the operator with more data or more information that may not be ready for decision making. So we had a really good input from operations, input for fire managers, and then the technology. So a very good discussion. My contact info is there. If anybody else is interested in a discussion about AI, wildfire modeling, and operationalization, I would love to speak a little bit more. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rocio. Jeanette Clark is next, presenting shared approaches to automating data quality assessment across the repository landscape.
Hi, everyone. The aim of this session was to try to enable groups to share current approaches and future ideas for implementing automated data quality assessment. The structure of the session was myself, Eugene Berger, and Matt Biddle all gave talks on the current systems that we're running across a couple different use cases. And some of our key takeaways were, one of them, the primary one, was that the data quality assessment needs really vary quite a bit depending on use case. And so we've tried to focus at least some of our discussion on how can we generate generic checks that would be useful for a very broad audience. Things like do the column names match the column names in the file match the metadata, column names in the metadata, or is the type what you expected? So we also spent quite a bit of time in the session brainstorming these check ideas and talking about different use cases, and had some really interesting discussion, got some really good ideas, and shared some tools. So if you're interested in doing more of this work, this is sort of really new stuff. So we don't quite have a permanent home within ESIP. I've added the data readiness cluster onto the ESIP Slack, kind of taking over or piggybacking on the AI data readiness, because they're also thinking about some of these topics as well. But if you're interested in this, feel free to contact me. It would be cool to get some other people who are interested in developing these shared definition of checks. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. Carla McAuliffe is next, and she's going to be presenting on the educator workshop that she led.
So I just put a bunch of links into the chat, but basically for a number of years, we've held an educator workshop in conjunction with the ESIP annual meeting. And this year we did something a little bit different that I think we're going to do moving forward. We held our sessions in parallel with your sessions. So next year, if you're interested, you can drop in to one of our sessions because they're all lined up at the same time. I would also like to acknowledge Douglas Rowe for his support of the Education Committee over a number of years, and to encourage you to get involved if you would like to. We had 3 different sessions this year, facilitated by my colleagues Lauren Brossi at the American Geosciences Institute and Don Haas at the Paleontological Research Institution. And it was phenomenal. We were small, but we had a lot of stuff going on. So there was a session on designing and using rain gardens. We had a session that was what we call kind of a data jamboree. So looking at data from USGS, NOAA, NASA, PRI. And then we had a final session on analyzing energy data. If you want to look at what we presented, the QR code plus the link there is to our agenda. And as many of you know, we were also looking at spatial data. And so there's this whole thing around merge cubes that coming up in the future. And then also in my image there is a poster of one of the teacher workshops. So we had one of the teacher posters. We had 3 teachers that applied for Friday funding and got funded, which is just wonderful. I'll just mention again, our goals for the teacher workshop were to enhance their ability to teach with data, raise their awareness of tools, data sets, and techniques that support what they're doing, build a collaborative community, and have fun. So if you have tools and data sets that you would like to reach out to the educator community, please think about coming to our meetings. I put all that, I put my address and I'll just briefly mention that the 2 listservs there, the first one is if you want to be part of the education committee. The second one, ESIP Ed for teachers, is if you have something specifically you would like to share with classroom teachers. So I'm just encouraging you, and I see parallels with all of the different organizations or committees here that we can support your work. Maybe you can support ours. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carla. Maggie Glasgow is going to be presenting on the changing landscape of disasters. How will we access trusted data services and support decision makers and communities with a rapidly changing environment?
Hi there. Thank you so much. Sorry for the very long title there. Quite a mouthful.
No worries.
So the Disaster Life Cycle Cluster hosted this session, and we wanted to have sort of an open discussion about the state of data and resources and availability and how we could support the decision-making community. We had an excellent discussion that included Maximilian Dixon, who is part of the Washington State Emergency Management Division. And we also talked a bit about our Trusted Data Now initiative, which is trying to gather information for decision makers to help to facilitate their ability to find data that they can use for both situational awareness and decision making. And one of the key takeaways I would say from the session was it's not just about the data, it's also about the message. So that was one of the things that came up over and over during the discussion. The contact information for myself and Dave Jones, who are the co-chairs of the DLC, are listed here, and I encourage you to please join our mailing list and attend our monthly telecons, which are the first Thursday of the month at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maggie. Joseph Bell is going to be presenting next on bridging ground measurements and remote observations and ecosystem monitoring.
Thank you, everyone, for the chance to recap here. Joseph Bell from the EnviroSensing Cluster. And yeah, so what our cluster is focused on is in situ measurements, right? These in-place measurements from observing systems and sensors. And what we wanted to do for this session was to bring it back and kind of treat me like a 5-year-old and explain things to me, right? And just quickly, a lot of many thanks to Cassandra Key and James Gallagher. We had some issues with the changes to the Fed way of life, and I wasn't able to make it, and a couple of the speakers weren't able to make it. So James and Cassandra did a great job. And yeah, so we were after bridging the gap, right? It's a really big gap between what gets sensed on Earth and what gets sensed remotely, like from satellites or drones or planes. And it was a really cool session because it took the cluster a little bit outside its comfort bubble, right? Instead of dealing with just single instruments, we're dealing with how those instruments interact with complex observing systems and trying to explain it using normal language, right? So it was a really cool session. Key takeaways, right? Improve forecasting, wildlife ignition risk by combining cloud to ground lightning data with 1 kilometer gridded precipitation records, right? Like how close can we link ground observations with those taken remotely? Combining flux tower and satellite observations, qualify the cooling adaptation, carbon sequestration, mitigation benefits in forest, right? Again, we have these eddy towers you see in the picture in the in situ on the left. How do they play into the system? Monitoring on the ground and such. And then also some of these other components like proxies, right? Remote sensing proxies, improve tracking, gross primary productivity in drylands where traditional greenness indices capture only 31% of the interannual variability, right? So this was a session that was really geared at getting a wider perspective than just a single point, and then how does that single point tie into other data sets like one would get from NASA and NOAA and the satellites and such. That's all I have. Thank you for the opportunity, and again, a really heartfelt thanks to Cassandra Key and James Gallagher for their efforts.
Alicia, you are muted.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Joseph. Just introducing our next speaker, Ian Nesbitt, who's going to be presenting on schema.org validation suites.
Thank you, Alicia. So this session focused on trying to figure out the different use cases around schema.org and trying to figure out some rules for validation of those various use cases. We had a few speakers. So Matt Jones gave an introduction, and then I presented on the Data One network and its use cases. Chantal Verhey from the Canadian Polar Data Consortium presented on their use case use of schema.org. Zach Bouquet presented on the heliophysics aspects of schema.org, and then Colin Smith presented his validation suite integrated Python software, and we had we sort of had some takeaways of the need for further development of these suites. Also, we sort of put out a call for other use cases to be put forward and to be integrated into our knowledge of what's out there and how to validate it. And then we also discussed the cluster leadership change because Adam Shepard will be stepping aside as the cluster leader, and we haven't had our next meeting yet, but that is on the discussion. I think it's a few days away. So, and then I have in putting in Slack now, or in the chat now, but we have some cluster contact information if anyone would like to get involved with the schema.org cluster or have questions about the session or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. Next, we have Anthony Boyd presenting Bringing Our Science Data to Life with Open Source Storytelling.
All right, for this session, our attempt was to have a hands-on workshop to allow the participants to get some experience working with this open source alternative to Esri Story Maps that we've been working on with NASA. And for any of you who attended the session, you'll know that it was the curse of a live demo. And I had relied on a paid service for the infrastructure of our instance here. And ironically enough, that paid closed source service failed us. So for everyone who was there, thank you so much for dealing with those issues. But I think we still had time to go through the configuration process for this tool and also to look at some of the live instances that we've created with NASA to handle use cases all the way from publishing stories of recent disasters like the Texas floods or LA fires, all the way to just general community engagement and communication. And a couple takeaways that really stood out to us were that configuring these stories, similar to Esri Story Maps, right now uses MDX files, and that was either really easy if you were already familiar with GitHub, or it was totally unrealistic if you're new to that world. There was really seemed to be nowhere in the middle there. And that's one of the nice things about Esri Story Maps is it is a point and click solution. And so that's the second takeaway that we had, that even though there's a lot of interest, there's some pretty significant gaps to adoption for an open source self-hosted solution like this, that Esri as a paid service has over the years addressed those gaps. And if we want an open source alternative to Story Maps, we're going to have to figure out some creative solutions. So I put a couple contacts there at the bottom. I'll share some emails in the chat as well. My sense is, of all the groups and communities that I've talked to about this idea, that this community probably is the closest fit for what we're looking for, who would be interested in an open source alternative, make the most use out of it, have the greatest public good if we had a tool like this. And so if you're curious on how you can use these stories in your own workflows or with your own work, please reach out and I'd be happy to at least discuss it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anthony. Finally, we have two presentations from Leslie Wyborn. The first will be for the COPDES cluster, a decade of enabling fair and earth and environmental science scholarly publications, evaluating outcomes and planning ahead.
Thanks, Alicia. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So this is the COPDES session. The COPDES cluster stands for Coalition of Publishing Data in the Earth and Space Sciences. And we thought it was good to have a reflective session because it's almost 10 years since the FAIR principles came out, and about 8 years since we had the enabling fair data in scholarly publications. And we generally felt that we are citing many more data sets in scholarly publications, but not well enough to enable their reuse. And so it's more about the degree of fairness that data citation achieved the F and the A, but the I and the R, which are critical for reuse, are just getting too hard. And I've got this block. It's pretty well established that 80% of citations with AGU are in generic repositories such as Zenodo and Figshare, and people are using minimum metadata profiles, which means it's pretty hard to reuse it. And so the suggestion was, well, you know, if you can't beat them, join them. Could we consider working with Zenodo and move towards enabling some standardization through promoting community agreed richer metadata profiles in generic repositories? So I'll leave it at that. And if we can move on to the next one. Perhaps we should have called this one eating your own dog food. It's getting really hard in Australia, particularly with government agencies, to do international travel. And we really believe that we need to get better at hybrid and virtual meetings, making scientific exchange exclusive, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. And so we put a proposal to ESIP, and Susan and Alicia agreed to have a go at it, in which we would actually try a hybrid meeting whereby fundamentally, if you look at your sessions, your afternoon sessions, the first one came through at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so we were dialing into that in our hotels. This was difficult for people with children. The next session, your last session in the afternoon, we were dialing in live and being nuisances and asking questions. But Alicia kindly then gave us all the recordings from your morning sessions. And as a group, we decided which ones we wanted to listen to. So there were 8 of us in Canberra, and we had one girl zooming in from Melbourne. And sometimes we actually had 3 concurrent sessions going by just gate crashing rooms that people weren't using and sitting as groups of 2 or 3 listening to this. And we had about 3 organisations represented, and it was brilliant, the cross conversations we got, and we learnt some valuable lessons. Number 1 was that if you want to do this at a small scale, provided the conference organiser is willing to get those recordings to you, this does actually work. And we were putting things in your notes which you probably mostly didn't see. So anyway, thank you very much, ESIP. It was a great trial, and we're willing to have another go at it in January for your next meeting. Thank you. Oh yeah, and Joey's put the blog, which describes it even more. And in my slide, I've got a link to a more detailed report where we went into the nitty-gritty of just making it work. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Leslie. And thanks so much for joining us so early in your morning. We really appreciate it. That brings us to the end of our session highlights. We're now going to transition over to a panel with our community fellows. Our community fellows serve for 1 year and play a big role in supporting our 2 meetings. We could not run these meetings without them. And I want to personally say thank you to each and every one of them, because they really kept me grounded as I was running around frantically for the entire week. This picture shows all 10 of our 2025 fellows at our meeting in Seattle. And today we have 3 joining us to offer their perspectives on the meeting: Cassandra Key, Keenan Gans, and Kelsey Hulsman. So welcome to all 3 of you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And is Kelsey here with us today?
I don't see them in the attendee list, so we might be without Kelsey, it seems.
Okay, no worries. Well, I can get us started. I just was curious what the highlight of the meeting was for you. And Keenan, we'll have you go first.
Okay. Yeah. I actually really enjoyed it was Joseph Gum was one of the organizers for the Archive Your First Dataset on Zenodo session. I like the week before the conference I'd been dealing with like a data set that had been published as part of a paper, archived on someone's personal website, and then that personal website disappeared. And so I had to make the data set from scratch. And so that was really frustrating. And so I got to then use that session to take the copy I had made, archive it in like a permanent location. And even though I think like it's got like what 3 or 4 views like since then, it's not exactly putting up crazy numbers, but I still think it's pretty neat that like just by being in the room, I was able to like, you know, be guided through the process of checking data into Zenodo, which I think was a valuable experience.
Right. Thanks, Keenan. Cassandra.
For me, actually, my favorite part, well, I don't know, I had a lot of favorite parts. It's really fantastic meeting, but I really enjoyed the ending plenary because with the current political climate and everything, like everyone's super nervous. And I think Susan and everyone did a really good job of like, what can we do to really like, you know, diversify our funding and like do all these things to really tackle the problem rather than just like have a negative view that sometimes conferences have when they're like, oh, I don't. But anyway, I thought that was really great. The working groups with that was awesome. And then it was just so touching with everyone's like new positions that were announced. So it was really nice to see. So that was my favorite.
Thanks, Cassandra. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. I know you all attended a lot of different sessions because you were supporting the AV and helping with all other kinds of things. But I was just kind of curious what your favorite session was and why that ended up being your favorite session. Cassandra, you can go first this time. Mix it up a little bit.
A little bit of bias, but my favorite session was definitely bridging the gap between ground sensors and satellite with envirosensing cluster. I think that's like a really important area. Like, how can we? It's such a big area, but also the made up workshops were really nice. The ones that everyone just like kind of made up on the same day, and then we went and had them. I attended one with a AI discussion with Amanda Levitt from I think NOAA, which was really cool. We talked a lot about like AI tools, and then it turned into like how we can use AI with data specifically in like the health sector, which is really interesting. So it's hard to pick, but at least those two.
You can go next, Keenan.
Yeah, sure. I kind of called out, I think, my favorite session of my last answer. That's another one was a lot of fun. I also really liked the session that DevSeed put on about open source storytelling. That was like really instructive as well. I think it gave me a good like overview of like storytelling tools that are out there. That's another, you know, I'm one of those early adopters where I would like to have more tools at my disposal for doing that kind of work. And so that was another cool session I enjoyed.
Great. And I'm glad Anthony was able to join us earlier too to talk about, yep, there we go. There's a heart. And Carla was giving gratitude to the fellows for helping out with the educator workshop. I know they really help a lot with that as well. Keenan, we'll go back to you, but what is unique about this conference, do you think, from others that you've been to? And I see you're here now, Kelsey, if you want to join us. But yeah, just kind of curious why you think someone should attend this event.
What I think is really unique about the ESIP conference is that it has the sort of disciplinary breadth that a lot of like, you know, the massive like national meetings have, but with a much smaller number of people. So I felt that I was able to like learn and hear about like the same breadth of things that I might see at like AGU or something like that. But I didn't have to deal with 20,000 people. I can quite reasonably talk to like have an interaction with like the majority of the people in attendance, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the scientific meetings can be overwhelming with how many people are there, how many sessions are going on. How about you, Cassandra?
Same. I like that it's smaller. It's a lot more personal. There's a lot more networking opportunities. And like Kina said, there's just like so much going on at ESIP and especially with the attendees. So like it's very well-rounded. And that gives a lot of fantastic networking opportunities and a lot of different topics that we can talk about and connect over, like the interdisciplinary type stuff. So I think ESIP's awesome. So
And Kelsey, thanks for joining us. And no worries, I saw you said you got the time wrong. That's totally fine. But the question I had just asked them was, what was unique about this conference from others you've been to, and why do you think someone else might be interested in attending?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Kelsey Hulsman. I'm the Biological Data Standards Cluster Community Fellow, and I was actually just in a meeting with my fellow co-chairs, and they were like, "Why are you not at the other meeting?" So that's when I found out that I had the time wrong. Sorry about that. But I had the most fun at this conference of any conference I've been to, but the only other conferences I've really been to have been AGU, which, as Keenan and Cassandra said, is just like a massive meeting. But the other thing that I really liked is just sort of the structure of everything and how, yes, it was interdisciplinary, which was really awesome, but also a lot more participatory and, um, everyone was able to weigh in. It was so fun. It was the funnest conference. So I would really hype that aspect. And yeah, like the networking was great, hearing people's sentiments. And yes, as Cassandra said in the chat, it's organized so well. I agree with that.
Well, again, a lot of that is thanks to y'all doing all that behind the scenes. So again, thank you. What recommendation do y'all have for other early career researchers to get the most out of attending a conference or meeting like ESIP? Cassandra, I'll go with you first.
I would recommend having business cards ready to go. I think that's very helpful. And also mine's colored, which isn't super helpful, but like if you have one that you can just write on, like make little notes like, oh, this is what we talked about to like remind yourself later. That's like one of the best things. For me, looking back at AGU last year, because I forgot to do this for ESIP, but next time. Also looking up people ahead of time on, I think it's SCED or whatever, to like really try to figure out who you want to connect with during ESIP, because there's a lot of opportunities to do that. I don't know. I mean, ESIP's great. Everyone should go.
Thanks, Cassandra. Keenan.
I'd say sign up for everything you can outside of the formal sessions, because to me that was, if anything, is where I had the most like professional development opportunities and like networking. And so I'm glad that like in the evenings, even though you're tired after a full day of conferencing, like if you can muster the strength to go out and be social for just a little while, that's where I found the most growth. And so that's what I'd suggest to another early career person.
We all had a really good time going to the baseball game one of the evenings together. It was a lot of fun. How about you, Kelsey?
I would say what I just happened to do that turned into being effective was just sitting with new people at breakfast and lunch and talking with them about what they do. I kind of stumbled across people who had very vital knowledge about things that I'm interested in and questions that I have about the research that I do. And it just sort of like by happenstance, I came across these people. And I feel like I might not have gotten that just from perusing the lists ahead of time. So I think, yeah, just like uh, being prepared to chat with your surrounding people at mealtime about anything and everything. I found pretty much every meal I got to talk to someone interesting.
Great. Yeah, there were a lot of great conversations that were happening throughout the week. We are going to be opening up applications for next year's Community Fellows program later this week, actually. Do y'all have any thoughts on why someone should apply to be a fellow for the program and what you have gotten out of the program? Keenan?
Yeah, I'd say people should apply. I think ESIP, I mean, yeah. But like, I remember when I applied, I actually applied for a different cluster than I ended up actually getting assigned to. Like, I work with interoperability, but I think I don't even remember which one I initially applied for. It doesn't matter anyway. And I think that reflects the main way that I benefit from being involved with ESIP is learning about things that I wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to, or being involved in projects that I wouldn't even have known existed, or yeah, that's absolutely apply if you know an early career person who would benefit.
Great. How about you, Cassandra?
Same. I think Fellows program, it's been a really unique experience for me. I've met people that I didn't think I would ever meet in like these high up positions, which is really cool to like get to know like what they do and learn a little bit more about like potential jobs and things. I've also learned a lot about like meetings and organization and how Zoom works, which is really useful skill. I also got to help convene our own session with the EnviroSensing cluster, which I don't think I would have been able to do otherwise. So I'm very thankful for Joseph Bell and James Gallagher and the EnviroSensing cluster. And I do think that people should apply and utilize this opportunity. So
Thanks, Cassandra. Kelsey.
Yeah, so I'm coming at this from like a slightly different perspective than a grad student since I'm a postdoc at this point. But I think that the benefits are kind of the same, and Keenan kind of already touched on this, but just like broadening your horizons and getting this sort of complementary perspective to what you already do. Like I work with the biological data standards cluster, and I have learned so much just from doing that. Like I'm not a data specialist. I'm just an ecologist, but the ways that it has like broadened my horizons and also sort of like helped me think about like big picture Earth system modeling, which is like the point of ESIP, has been really inspiring and good. And yeah, like meeting people who can help you actually turn that into like a research project has also been such a cool opportunity. So yeah, I'd recommend this to any kind of like late stage grad student or early career postdoc researcher. I think it's a really good opportunity. And it forces you to broaden your horizons. And it's like I need to be forced sometimes to broaden my horizons. And I think a lot of academics do.
Great. Well, thank the three of you all so much. Everyone, please give them a round of applause for doing this and being on the panel and answering these questions. And a round of applause too for everyone else who spoke today. It was really great having everyone here with us. So that has kind of ended our tour of the 2025 July meeting. We hope you learned a lot and are excited to join us in future activities. We want to thank our sponsors for the event. These meetings cost a lot to host, and they really help us offset some of our expenses and allow us to support travel for attendees who could not be here otherwise. So thank you all so much. Looking ahead, consider this your invitation to join our next meetings that are in January and July. Our January meeting is fully virtual and is going to be January 20th through the 23rd. Our summer meeting is going to be in Austin, Texas next year, and that's happening July 28th through the 31st. And although this is generally considered our in-person meeting, there are also opportunities to attend that event virtually. Everyone is welcome to join our ESIP community. You can scan the QR code shown here or visit our website to learn about all the ways to get involved. And then finally, if you're not already subscribed, we highly encourage you to join the ESIP update mailing list to get a weekly message summarizing what's going on in and around ESIP. So thank you all again to our speakers and all the session leaders, all the community fellows who helped us take this most recent ESIP meeting to the next level. And thank you all for being here today. As a reminder, this recording will be made available on the ESIP YouTube channel. And yeah, that's going to end our webinar. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.